What's up guys, welcome back to Timbecon Turning and welcome back to the wood turning challenge where I have been tasked with making my first ever segmented bowl right here in the studio without the use of a table saw or bandsaw. Last week we machined all of the timber to be square and parallel all around, so now it's time to get into cutting our wedges and gluing up some of our segmented rings. Now to cut the wedges I'm going to be using this, which is the Best Saw Guide. That's its name, not a statement, though it's one of the best guides I've used, so maybe it is a statement. The thing is, this guide is designed for making either 90-degree square cuts or 45-degree miter cuts, and that's it. So I've had to get a little bit creative with how I'm using the guide, but this here is my solution that anyone should be able to reproduce at home. All it is a piece of plywood with a dressed piece of 19 by 42 scrap glued to the rear edge to act like a fence. On top of that fence, I've grabbed another piece of scrap and this super handy digital protractor, and I've glued that on top at exactly 75 degrees to the front edge. Now 75 degrees is what we need for a 12 segment ring, but if you're doing different numbers or other segments, obviously you'll just change that angle to suit you. Now with that setup, it's just a matter of referencing the rear edge of the Best Saw Guide onto that little fence and clamping it firmly in place, and that's it. Our saw guide is set, it's in the perfect angle that we need, and we're ready to start cutting our little segments. Now I feel like I should mention that there is an alternative saw guide that Timbecon sells, and it's this one here called the F-Saw Guide, and it's fully adjustable and you can even do compound angles with it, so you can tilt the blade and the base. Now I opted to use the Best Saw Guide as anytime there's adjustment built into something, I feel like there's an increased chance of error, so using a fixed guide like this is just more appealing to me. To cut the segments, I just set up a stop block to be around what I think looked right for the first spacing, and I got to cutting. Now Japanese saws cut on the pull stroke, so the saw itself does a pretty good job of keeping the strip firmly indexed against the fence, and all we have to do is kind of press down a little bit. After every cut, we flip the workpiece, clear out any dust, and slide it up to our stop block and cut again. After we've cut 12 segments, we should have a full ring, assuming our maths is correct, and we can test how the ring goes together. And what do you know? We actually are left with a pretty damn good segment with no gaps whatsoever. So take that, table saw guys. Hand tools, winning. Now after each full ring is cut, I just adjust my stop block by a few millimeters and repeat the process to get a larger or smaller ring. I found by adjusting the stop by 2 to 3 millimeters for the narrow strips and 5 millimeters for the thicker strips, it gave me a step over that looked like it should blend together quite well. Honestly though, I have no idea. I'm making this all up as I go, and in the future, I'm definitely going to do some more planning to give me a better idea of what sort of form I'm going for, as I think that would make it a little bit less guesswork and a bit more calculated. Now to glue the rings together, I just used Titebond Original. It's plenty strong and it cures fairly quickly, though its working time is a little bit short, so you need to be speedy with getting it all done. What I found, if I stacked all the wedges together like this and then applied the glue to all the faces at once, it came together really quickly and the glue was still within its open time by the time it was in clamps. Now if you're struggling to get things together in a timely manner, Titebond 3 may be a better option for you, as it has got a longer working time, but there's also Titebond Extend if you are really struggling and want to be safe. For some of the larger diameter rings, I did use large cable ties that I linked together, as I just didn't have a large enough hose clamp on hand. This worked pretty well, though the tension I could get on this was definitely nowhere near as much as I could with a hose clamp, so luckily for me, my joints were nice and tight, and this did the job just fine. Now there was 1 or 2 rings that just didn't close up for some reason. Either I bumped the jig while I was cutting it, or maybe there was some sawdust jammed between the fence and the workpiece. But either way, it threw things off. Now, instead of throwing those rings out, I just glued them up in 2 halves, and I put a nail between the halves as well to keep them separated while we apply the clamping force. The nails will allow the 2 halves to close up perfectly, and once dried, I can flatten the 2 halves individually and glue them back together and get a nice closed ring. It's definitely more steps, but it beats wasting material, and you know, a couple extra steps here and there for tighter rings, I'm happy with that. Alright, so there we go. Segmented turning without a table saw. Not that hard after all, especially if you got the right gear. So we've got a bunch of rings. I've still got a couple to do, but I'll do that off camera. So next week what we have to figure out is how to flatten these rings so we can glue them together and get a nice positive joint. And I think for that, a lot of it's going to be done on the lathe. These thicker ones won't be an issue, but the thinner ones, I've still got a little bit of thinking to do on that. Now, like always, links to everything I've used in this video will be down in the description below. So if you want more info on anything, that's where you can find it. And like always, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That's kind of the way we know that we're doing the right thing and people are enjoying what we're doing. If you have any feedback, any questions, anything like that, make sure you leave it down in the comments as well, because we'll be sure to answer those as quickly as possible. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I'll see you next week when we actually start getting something that looks a bit more like a bowl. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.